Welcome. In this lecture, we're going to create a new project and get it set up so it's configured to use the Steam platform. And after that, we'll access the online subsystem and print some text to the screen to verify that we've connected with Steam. So let's get started with creating a new project. So I have the Epic Games launcher open, and I'm going to go ahead and launch Unreal Engine 5. Now I'm going to select Games and choose the third-person template so we can have some characters that are capable of running around. I'm going to make sure that this is a C++ project, and I have my project location set up here in C/multiplayer course. Now, we're going to make a menu system for this project, so I'm going to call this project Menu System and click Create. Now, I have my new project open here, and the first thing I want to do if I'm going to configure this project for Steam is to enable the Steam plugin. We can go up to Edit and Plugins and select that to open the Plugins menu. Now here in the Plugins menu, I can search with the search bar, and I'm going to search for Online Subsystem Steam. And you'll see that there's this Online Subsystem Steam plugin, which says Access to Steam Platform. This needs to be enabled if we're going to be using Steam, so I'm going to click Enabled. And now the editor is telling me that the Unreal Editor must be restarted for the plugin changes to take effect. So let's go ahead and click Restart Now. Now the editor has restarted for me, and I can close the plugins window. And the next thing we need to do is actually enable the Steam module. I'm going to minimize this and head into my Visual Studio project. Now a module is just a code package that exists in the engine. If I click the drop-down next to UE5, we can see a folder called Plugins. And if we expand that, we'll see all of the different plugins that make up various parts of the engine. Each one of these plugins is a module, and it contains specific code for certain things in the engine. Now, in order to have access to a particular module, we need to add it to our build file. So if I click the drop-down next to Source, and click the drop-down next to Menu System, I'll see this .build.cs file, and I can click on that. Now this is a CS or C# file, and it contains something called public dependency module names, and any modules listed here will be accessible from within our project. So we're going to add a module to this list by adding a comma followed by the name of the module in double quotes, and the module is going to be Online Subsystem Steam. So after adding Online Subsystem Steam to the public dependency module names, we should have access to that particular module. And in addition to Online Subsystem Steam, let's add Online Subsystem. Now these are two different modules. The Online Subsystem is the overall subsystem that we'll interact with. Online Subsystem Steam is the platform-specific subsystem that our Online Subsystem will use to connect to Steam. Let's go ahead and compile this now. Now we get a successful compile. So the next thing we need to do is configure our project to use Steam as the online subsystem. To do that, I'm going to open up the folder that contains my project. Now in this folder, there's a folder called config. And if I open that, we have some config files. These have the .ini extension. And we can open the default engine.ini by simply using a text editor. I'm going to use Notepad++. Now here's the default engine.ini file. We just need to add a few things to this file so that our project is configured to use Steam. Now here's the Unreal Engine documentation for the online subsystem Steam. Now if you'd like to learn a bit more about this, you can read this article. But if we scroll a good way down, we'll see that it contains information for the settings that we have to add to the default engine.ini. Now the first thing we see here is there's a section that we should have in our default engine.ini file, this script/engine.gameengine, and we're including this net driver definitions. A net driver is a program designed to connect a computer to a given network. Now we need to set the net driver to the Steam net driver. That way we'll be using the Steam net driver, and that will connect us to the Steam network. Now we're also defining an online subsystem section. setting this default platform service equal to Steam, and that way we're configuring our game to use the Steam network service. We're also going to add this online subsystem Steam section where we're enabling Steam and we're setting our Steam DevApp ID. Now, we're using the DevApp ID 480. That's because we don't have a Steam DevApp ID. Now, you can go to the Steam website and apply for your own DevApp ID, but until you take that step, you can use the Steam DevApp ID 480. This is the DevApp ID for Steam's example project called Space War. Now, lots of people are using the DevApp ID 480 so that they can learn how to use Steam services without having their own DevApp ID yet. So that's what we're going to do. Now, we also need this additional section, Online Subsystem Steam, Steam NetDriver, so that we can set Net Connection class name to Online Subsystem Steam, Steam Net Connection. So these are the configuration settings that we need to configure our project to use Steam. So we're going to copy all of these and add them to our default engine.ini file. So I'm going to paste that in and save it. And now we have these additional sections in our default engine.ini config file. So now that we've added some settings to default engine.ini, I'm going to go back to my folder that contains my project, and I'm going to regenerate the Visual Studio project files so everything is updated. Now, before I do that, I'm going to close out of the Visual Studio project and close out of my Unreal Engine project as well. Now, before I regenerate Visual Studio project files, I'm going to delete some of these auto-generated folders here. I'm going to delete saved, intermediate, and binaries. And now I can right-click on the .u project and select Generate Visual Studio Project Files. I'm using Unreal Engine 5, so that's the version I'm selecting, and I'm going to click OK. Now you'll see that the saved and intermediate files are back. Let's double-click the .u project to open it back up, and we're going to be prompted to rebuild missing modules. That's because we deleted some folders. I'm going to click Yes. And now you'll see the binaries folder is back. So we've opened our project again. I'm going to minimize it, and I'm going to open our .sln again. And here's my project. I'm going to close out of the build.cs file. So now that our project is configured to use Steam as its subsystem, we can now access the online subsystem in our code. In the next video, we'll actually access the online subsystem through our code. And then we'll add some on-screen debug messages to show the name of that subsystem so we can see whether or not we've actually connected to Steam. So in summary, we created a new project and configured it to use Steam as its online subsystem. And we've added the online subsystem and online subsystem Steam modules to the public dependency module names in our project's build file. Now we have access to the online subsystem, and we're ready to start using it in our code. I'll see you soon.